ورتل القرآن ترتيلا.
Assalamu alaikum. In this lesson, we will be covering the whole of Sifaat summary. Our learning objectives are: number one, to be able to distinguish between Sifaat and Makharij. Number two, to know the different categories of Sifaat. And finally, to know the different letters for each category and how to pronounce them correctly. Now, what is Makharij and what is Sifaat? Makharij only provides information as to where the sound of the letter comes from, whereas Sifaat provides information as to how the letter comes out, so we know the unique characteristics and sound of each letter. There are two categories of Sifaat: Sifaat Lazima and Sifaat Arida. Sifaat Lazima comes in two further categories: Sifaat Lazima with opposites where all the letters are included, and Sifaat Lazima with non-opposites where only some letters are included. Sifaat Arida we have covered previously. Sifaat Lazima with opposites where all the letters are included are subdivided into 5 categories. Number 1, air. Number 2, sound. Number 3, tongue. Number 4, back of the mouth. And number 5, pronunciation. Each letter will fall into one of these categories. Air, where air will flow or air will not flow. When air flows, it is called hams. When air does not flow, it is called al-JAHR. Number 2, sound. Where sound flows, sound partially flows, or sound does not flow. When sound flows, it is called al-Rikhawa. When sound partially flows, it is known as al-Tawassut. When sound does not flow, it is known as al-Shiddah. Number 3, the tongue. The tongue is lowered and the tongue is elevated. When the tongue is lowered, it is known as al-Istifaal, and when the tongue is elevated, it is known as al-Isti'laa. Number 4, the back of the mouth. The back of the mouth opens or the back of the mouth closes. When the back of the mouth opens, it is known as al-INFITAAH, and when the back of the mouth closes, it is known as al-ITHLAAQ. Number 5, pronunciation. When there is ease or fluency of a letter or where it is restrained. When there is ease or fluency of a letter, it is known as al-ITHLAAQ, and when the letter is restrained, it is known as al-Ismat. There are 10 letters of hams, and the easy terminology to remember it is by فحثه شخص سكت. The letters are fa, ha, fa, ha, sheen, kha, صاد, سين, kaf, and ta. The rest of the letters, which are 19 letters, fall into the category of JAHR. So we have looked at air, where it flows and it is known as hams, and there are 10 letters, and we remember with the terminology فحثه شخص سكت. And air, where it does not flow, it is known as al-JAHR, and the remaining letters fall into this category. There are 5 letters of tawassut, and the easy way to remember this is with the terminology LEEN Umar. The letters are Lam, Noon, Ain, Mim, and Ra. There are 8 letters of Shiddah, and there is 2 ways of remembering this: the classic way, Ajid Qitta Bakat, and the easy way, Qutubu Jad Tikka. The letters are Hamza, Jim, Dal, Qaf, Ta, Ba, Kaf, and Ta. The remaining letters, 16 letters, fall into the category of Rikhawa. So, as previously, we have looked at airflow, which is known as hams, air which does not flow, which is known as JAHR. There are 10 letters of hams, فحثه شخص سكت, and the remaining letters are of al-JAHR. We have just looked at sound that flows, which is known as a rikhawa, sound partially flows, which is known as a tawassut, and sound which does not flow, which is known as shiddah. Sound which does not flow has 8 letters, ajid, qitta, bakat. Sound that partially flows is known as a tawassut, 5 letters, LEEN, Umar, and the rest of the letters are known as a rikhawa. There are 7 letters of isti'la, and the easy way to remember this is khus, daq, tin, qid. The letters are kha, sad, dad, ghain, ta, qaf, and dha. The rest of the 22 letters fall into the category of istifaal. So, air flows, which is known as hams. There are 10 letters. Easy way to remember, فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ. Air does not flow, which is known as JAHR, and the rest of the letters fall into this category. Sound flows, which is known as a rikhawa. Sound partially flows, which is known as a tawassut, and sound does not flow, which is known as a shiddah. For a shiddah, there are 8 letters, ajid, qitta, bakat. For a tawassut, there are 5 letters, LEEN, Umar, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of ar-rikhawa. So now we have looked at the tongue. When the tongue is lowered, it is known as al-istifaal, and when the tongue is elevated, it is known as al-isti'la. There are 7 letters of al-isti'la, khus, daq, tin, qid, and the rest of the letters fall into al-istifaal. There are 4 letters of itbaq. The letters are sad, dad, ta, and dha. The remaining 25 letters fall into the category of INFITAAH. So we have looked at air flow, which is known as hams. We have looked at air which does not flow, which is known as JAHR. There are 10 letters of hams, فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of al-JAHR. We have looked at sound flows, which is known as a rikhawa, sound partially flows, which is known as a tawassut, and sound which does not flow, which is known as a shiddah. For a shiddah, there are 8 letters, ajid, qitta, bakat. For a tawassut, there are 5 letters, LEEN, Umar, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of ar-rikhawa. We have looked at the tongue. When the tongue is lowered, it is known as al-istifaal, and when the tongue is elevated, it is known as al-isti'la. There are 7 letters of al-isti'la, khus, daq, tin, qid, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of al-istifaal. We have looked at the back of the mouth, when it opens and when it closes. When the back of the mouth opens, it is known as al-infitaah, and when the back of the mouth closes, it is known as al-itbaq. There are 4 letters of al-itbaq, sad, dad, ta, and dha, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of al-infitaah. There are 6 letters of ITHLAAQ, and the easy way to remember this is fir min lub, or my way, which is lemon baraf. The letters are fa, ra, mim, noon, lam, and ba. The remaining 23 letters fall into the category of al-ismat. So now we will summarize the table once more, and as you can see, we are doing this time and time again, so you can build up on the knowledge of a sifaat in each category. So let's look at this one more time. Air flows is known as hams, and air does not flow is known as a JAHR. There are 10 letters of hams, فَحَثَّهُ شَخْصٌ سَكَتْ, and the rest of the letters are known as al-JAHR. Sound flows is known as a rikhawa. Sound partially flows is known as a tawassut. Sound does not flow is known as a shiddah. There are 8 letters of a shiddah, ajid, qitta, bakat. There are 5 letters of tawassut, LEEN, Umar, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of ar-rikhawa. The tongue is lowered, which is known as al-istifaal, and the tongue is elevated, which is known as al-isti'laa. There are 7 letters of al-isti'laa, which are khus, dagh, tin, qidh, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of al-istifaal. The back of the mouth opens is known as al-infitaah, and the back of the mouth closes is known as al-itbaaq. There are 4 letters of al-itbaaq, sad, dad, ta, dha, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of al-infitaah. For the pronunciation with ease or fluency, it is known as al-ITHLAAQ, and for restrained pronunciation, it is known as al-ismat. There are 6 letters of al-ITHLAAQ, fir, min, lub, and the rest of the letters fall into the category of al-ismat. So just another reminder that there are 2 categories of Sifaat, Sifaat lazima and Sifaat arida. We are looking at Sifaat lazima. We have just covered Sifaat lazima with opposites where all the letters were included, and now we are going to look at non-opposites where only some letters are included. So Sifaat lazima with non-opposites where certain letters are included are subdivided into 8 categories. Safir, QALQALAH, LEEN, INHIRAAF, TAKREER, TAFASH-SHEE, ISTITAALAH, and GHUNNAH. There are 3 letters of Safir: Sin, Za, Sad. As, Az, As. So you can hear the whistling and the buzzing sound. So Safir is the whistling sound. We have 3 letters: Sin, Za, and Sad. There are 5 letters of QALQALAH, Qutubu Jad, Qaf, Ta, Ba, Jim, and Dal. And the QALQALAH can only be heard when there is a sukoon or when you are stopping and it has a shaddah. So, Aq, At, Ab, Aj, Ad. So, the Safir, there are 3 letters: Sin, Za, Sad, which is a whistling sound, and the QALQALAH with the echoing sound, there are 5 letters, Qutubu Jaddin. There are 2 letters of Leen, Ya preceded by a fatah and a Waw preceded by a fatah. For example, Bay, Shay, Bow, Show. Remember that these letters have to be elongated for 2 counts. So the condition is the Waw Sakina and the Ya Sakina will have a fatah before it. So we have seen Safir, which is a whistling sound, has 3 letters: Sin, Za, Sad. The QALQALAH, which is the echoing sound, has 5 letters: Qutubu Jaddin. And the Leen, which is a soft ease sound, has 2 letters, the Ya and the Waw, which is preceded by a fatah. There are 2 letters of Inhiraaf, the Lam and the Ra. La, Lu, Li, Al. The Lam diverts from the side of the tongue towards the tip of the tongue. Ra, Ru, Ri, Ar. The Ra diverts from the tip of the tongue towards the back of the tongue near the makharij of the letter Lam. So, as we have covered previously, Safir is the whistling sound, 3 letters: Sin, Za, Sad. QALQALAH, which is the echoing sound, 5 letters: Qutubu Jad. Leen, which is soft ease sound, which are 2 letters: Ya Sakina and Waw Sakina preceded by a fatah. Inhiraaf, which is the drifting or the leaning, and there are 2 letters, the letter Lam and the letter Ra. The letter of Takreer is the letter Ra, Ra, Ru, Ri, Ar, Arra. It is very important not to exaggerate the rolling of the tongue with the letter Ra. So, we have looked at Safir, which is the whistling sound. There are 3 letters involved: Sin, Za, Sad. We have looked at QALQALAH, which is the echoing sound, which are 5 letters: Qutubu Jad. We have looked at Leen, which is a soft ease sound, which has the letter Ya and the letter Waw. We have looked at Inhiraaf, which is the drifting or the leaning, which is the letter Lam and Ra. And we have looked at the takreer, which is a repetition, which is the letter ra. The letter of TAFASH-SHEE is the letter sheen. Sha, shu, she, ash. So from the beginning, safir, which is a whistling sound, 3 letters, sin, za, sad. Qalqalah, which is an echoing sound, 5 letters, qutubu jad. Leen, which are 2 letters, ya and waw, preceded by a fatah. Inhiraaf, which is the drifting or the leaning, which are 2 letters, the ra and the lam. And takreer, which is the repetition, which is the letter ra. And TAFASH-SHEE, which is the spreading, 1 letter, sheen. The letter of ISTITAALAH is the letter dad. Da, di, du, ad, adda. Now again with this letter, it can only be heard when there is a sukoon or when there is a shaddah. So the sound of the letter will cover the entire tongue from the beginning of the makharij till the end when it has a sukoon or a shaddah. So again from the beginning, safir, which is the whistling sound, it has 3 letters, sin, za, sad. Qalqalah, which is the echoing sound, has 5 letters, qutubu jad. Leen, which is soft ease sound, has 2 letters, ya sakina, waw sakina, preceded by a fatah. Inhiraaf, which is the drifting or the leaning, the 2 letters, lam and ra. Takreer, which is the repetition, has 1 letter, the letter ra. TAFASH-SHEE, which is the spreading of the sound, is 1 letter, the letter sheen. ISTITAALAH is the elongated sound, which is 1 letter, the letter dad. There are 2 letters of GHUNNAH, the letter noon and the letter mim. Example, anna, unna, inna, amma, umma, imma. And as you can hear, we hold the sound of the GHUNNAH for 2 counts. So just to summarize the whole table, and again just to echo that we are repeating these tables so it can build up on your knowledge of each category. So safir, which is a whistling sound, 3 letters are involved, the letters sin, za and sad. Qalqalah, which is the echoing sound, 5 letters, qutubu jad. Leen, which is soft ease sound, 2 letters, ya sakina, waw sakina, preceded by a fatah. Inhiraaf, which is the drifting or the leaning, there are 2 letters involved, the letter lam and the letter ra. Takreer, which is the repetition, there is 1 letter involved, the letter ra. TAFASH-SHEE, which is the spreading of the sound, there is 1 letter involved, the letter sheen. ISTITAALAH, which is the elongated sound, there is 1 letter, the letter dad. And GHUNNAH, which is the nasal sound, there are 2 letters, the letters noon and the letter mim. So what have we learnt in this lesson? We are able to distinguish between Sifaat and makharij. We know the different categories of Sifaat, and we know the different letters for each category and how to pronounce them correctly. Hope you benefited from this lesson. Keep seeking knowledge. Ma'as salama.